Hello, everybody. This is Ronnie Bincer, the Hangout Helper, helping you learn how to use Hangouts. And today's show, we're going to focus on using mobile. Mobile Hangout on Air broadcasting from the streets or wherever you want to be, wherever your mobile phone works. You can broadcast live Hangout on Air. Pretty awesome stuff. We're going to go into a lot of the details talking about the equipment that we use. We were just in Austin, Texas at what's called South by Southwest Interactive. And we did about 33 or so live broadcasts from the streets. And we're going to go over the details of the equipment we use, the processes we use to set things up to get it going. And that's what this show is about. But before we get started, I wanted to let the people in the film strip tell us briefly about why they're here and who they are. So let's start out with Debbie. Debbie, please tell us a little of your background.
Hi, I'm a communication strategist, and I've been part of the Hangout Mastery Group since last October, I think. And we have just learned, we got pretty proficient at running Hangouts. So then when Ronnie said he's taking it to the streets, I thought, okay, that's getting into some complicated stuff. So I was able to gain some experience with that, and I'm still learning. So stay tuned. There's lots to know.
Fantastic. And Jeff, you're going to be up. Jeff was the cameraman. Well, I'm sorry. Tell us why you're here, Jeff.
Yeah, my name is Jeff C. with His Design Online. I've been a member, I think, from the beginning of the Hangout Helper Mastery Group. And I went with Ronnie down to Austin, and just because I'm also in Texas, and I also wanted to pick Ronnie's brain a little bit, and because I think Hangouts are, the just incredible, a great way to meet people and then to engage with your audience. So that's why I wanted to go. And mobiles was just cutting edge, and I wanted to be a part of it. So that's why I went.
Fantastic. Michael, you are up.
Yeah, I've been extremely interested since Hangouts have started, so this was just another avenue with the mobile end of it, and I do all kinds of stuff, many different things, from using it cooking food, using it with baseball, using Hangouts, so all this stuff applies. So the mobile intrigued me, and again, I've been with the Mastery as well in Ronnie's group since its inception, and absolutely love every part of it. So anytime you can learn any of this kind of stuff, I'm totally into it. So thank you for that, Ronnie.
Sure. Pleasure. Okay, and then the first three people were here from the U.S. We got a special guest from Italy. So Nazim, please tell us who you are.
Hey, thanks for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm Nazim Beltran with Park Media here in Italy. We're in charge of doing interactive solutions for major clients in the fashion business and design business. And definitely very interested in using mobile as an approach towards doing fashion shows or conference settings, and that's why basically South by Southwest was a very interesting experience to check out, and I'm here as a special across the pond guest.
Perfect. All right, so what we're going to do, just to get everybody a heads up, we're going to start this show. From here on, we're going to do some training. We're going to talk about the specifics, and I've got a series of slides we're going to go through, and I'm going to just zip through them because this is a video that you can rewind and watch again later. You can even rewind while we're live if you want. And so I'm going to do it relatively quickly because I want to be able to cover a lot of questions, and that will happen generally at the very end of the training, but I want to do this one chunk pretty quickly. So here we go. I'm going to turn on some screen share and we get this thing going. All right, so from the best I can tell, we are live with the screen share, and so here we go. We're talking about mobile, Hangout on Air, the equipment involved, and we'll eventually get into the processes and the setup procedures and things in just a moment. So let's go right to one of our first slides. This was our first interview, the first official interview for the series, and we were honored to have Guy Kawasaki be there with us. And what we were doing here is we actually put the equipment on a rig that's slightly different that we use the majority of the time. It was a tripod, but basically we'll talk about the specific details of each one later. But if you'll note here, we've got on the left, the actual phone is on the tripod pointing to the people being interviewed, and this is me holding a microphone and a little blue thing, which is a speaker, because we did something different this year. We got more interactive, and we got the people in the film strip asking questions of myself and the interviewee during our live broadcast. So that's we kind of upped the game versus last year, because we did this last year. It's just got better this year. So now here we go, nitty gritty, some of the details. This is a picture that is in the event. It's also been shared out in the public stream, and within that area, we have listed all the different equipment as well as links to each and every one of them, or at least the majority of them, in that post. And if you'll need help finding that, I can help you with that later. But for right now, we're just going to talk about what that equipment is that's sitting on the table. We'll start with number one. It's a splitter. That's this thing right here that plugs into the telephone or into the mobile device. And it splits out to an XLR connection as well as a 3.5 millimeter connection to go to like speakers. So the XLR goes into like a microphone, which is number two. So we had a directional microphone, an XLR mic. And number three, if we jump over that, is what we used to help this year that was needed to help boost the audio sound. And this particular one is called a Boosteroo. It's got a little picture of a kangaroo there. And what it allowed us to do was plug in to the other side of that splitter, the Boosteroo, which then could have three different outputs that could go, for example, right above it, to the two different speakers. And the volume needed boosting because we were splitting it amongst multiple speaker devices. So that's why we used the Boosteroo. So that was number three. Number four is just a cable that we would use between the Boosteroo and one of the speakers. Number five over here is a longer cable, which I used again from the Boosteroo to the other speaker that was hanging around my neck. And then number six is the speaker that we had stuck on, well, it's the cameraman speaker basically. It was on the monopod thing. That was six. Number seven is that little portable speaker that I had around my neck, and that was what I and the guests that I was interviewing would be able to hear. And then number eight is just an XLR cable. We tried less cables, and it just didn't work out as well with the particular equipment we had, so we kept with the cables. Number nine is the monopod, which is the thing that a lot of the stuff is strapped to, and we either used the monopod or a tripod. The monopod and a tripod on the top portion of it have a thing where you can screw in clamps or things, and that's where number 10 comes in. This is the clamp to hold the phone. I chose this particular clamp because in my mind it's the most universal, because you don't have to worry about how big or small your phone is. The drawback is you do have to worry about how tightly you're clamping it onto the phone, because if you did it too tight you could crack your screen, and you don't want to do that. So it's just one of those good and bad things. I liked it, but just be careful with that. And then number 11, this was a portable power supply or a battery. It had two USB connections so that whenever we needed to, we could charge the phone or charge some of these other devices that might plug into a USB. So I'm going to move on and keep going. We'll have another little moment to talk about the equipment in just a little bit. So let's go to the next slide. This is what it looked like assembled sitting on the bed in the hotel. Okay, this is not real fancy stuff, but that's what it was. So this is the microphone, the long nasty cable all tangled. This happens. And there was another long cable, and that was this thing that would go to the portable speaker hanging around my neck. But attached to the monopod, we had the speaker, which is in this crocheted thing because my wife helped. We also used rubber bands. That was connected to the Boosteroo. That's that amplification for the speakers, the boosting thing. And then we had the XLR cables connecting to the phone, which is not pictured because I was actually taking a picture with the phone. And this is the clamp at the end of the monopod to hold the phone. This is what it looked like last year. Very similar layout, just slightly different because we added a little bit more equipment to the monopod. So the cameraman's holding the phone on the end of the monopod with a speaker so the cameraman can hear it. There's a cable that goes to me with the microphone, and this year we had some extras with extra speakers. And we forgot, this sounds silly, but we forgot to get someone to take a picture of us while we were active live filming. People were taking pictures of us all over the place, but there's nobody I know, and I don't know where to get the pictures from. So if you happen to be one of them, send us a picture. Thanks. So this is me in front of for 2014, this year, in front of that South by Southwest photo wall or whatever, holding the rig. It's not just fully in action, though. So we've got the mic. This is the phone actually in the clamp, so you can see how that looks. And then all the other stuff we were just talking about. This day, I had a different colored, instead of blue, I had a purple polka dot speaker for my local one. This is Jeff C., the cameraman extraordinaire, along with me. Okay, and here what we're doing, and actually this picture's kind of neat because it looks like the bike is holding up the camera, but it's not. It just happens to be in the background. This is the rig in action, and there's two cameras on your normal modern mobile phones, smartphones. The one that's pointing away from us is the higher quality camera. That's the one we use the majority of the time for the filming or the broadcasting. But what we're doing this time is we're actually doing a live remote where we were asked by Mia Voss to be in her weekend show. So we came in to do a quick briefing from live on the streets, and so Jeff and I wanted to both be in the film strip together and be able to see the other people in the film strip, so that we were using the other camera, the one that's on the screen side, while we were doing this particular broadcast. And then this is what it looks like through the camera, where I was interviewing two people. They're both Google employees. The one in the middle is Justine. She's one of the main community managers for all of Google+. And I just wanted to give you a picture. This is us with the microphone. I'm holding the blue speaker, if you know, right below there so that they could hear questions coming from the people down here in the bottom right in the film strip. So we tried to make it much more interactive this year. Last year, we just did broadcasting. This year, we were broadcasting and trying to interact with questions from the film strip. Now, the nerdy part. Well, if that wasn't nerdy enough. Okay, here comes part of the nerdy part. One of the things you're going to run into in a very active environment like this is there's a lot of people using the bandwidth that you're going to need to use for your phone when you're broadcasting. This particular screenshot is of a speed test of the network when I was on wireless Wi-Fi. And I don't know if you can see it up there, but in the upper portion that's Wi-Fi. I brought my own hotspot as a backup in case the phone network wasn't going to work well enough for me. This also did not work well enough. So this is not acceptable for doing a good live broadcast. We've got download speed that's fine. Anything above 2 megabits per second is good. The upload speed is where it's going to kill you. This was 0.36, so that was not acceptable. Also, a big problem for the wireless was the ping rate. The ping rate was way too high. You want to get this down into like a 10 millisecond if it's possible, or at least closer to a smaller number than 100. So this was unacceptable, unfortunately, so we never did use the Wi-Fi. What we did use is this one. I just changed it to another screenshot. This is 4G LTE broadcast through or using Verizon is what system I was using. The upload speed was well above the 2 megabits per second minimum that I think you need, and the download speed, again, was also above the 2. So if you can get at least 2 megabits up and down, you're pretty good. The ping rate lower than the 100, but still not exactly where we'd like it to be, but it was much better than 100 something. So that's there. What I've got here is just a refresher or reminder of the equipment here, and I want to open it up. Well, I'm going to stay on the screenshot here, but I want to open up to any questions that the film strip members might have on the specific equipment that are quick now, and we'll cover other detailed questions later on after we go through the process. So is there any other questions you guys wanted to ask right now?
I brought up a question from William Rock.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can blue box that, but he wanted to know why we didn't just use Bluetooth. Did you cover that?
No, he didn't cover it, but I can give a quick answer on that. Bluetooth, at this point in time, does both speaker and microphone. You cannot isolate one from the other through mobile devices. On the desktop, you can. So what that meant was we could get a Bluetooth speaker, but it also had its own built-in crappy microphone that would not let us do what we needed to do on the streets because the mic quality was so poor that it just wasn't going to work. We used a directional microphone so that I could stick it in my face, and when the big bus making all kinds of noise was going by, you wouldn't hear it at all. Whereas if we used a Bluetooth mic, it would be too noisy. So that's a good one. Any other quick questions we can?
I got a real quick question. It's probably more directed towards Jeff, who's in the strip, and since he was working with the monopod. The monopod versus a tripod solution, obviously the monopod seems to be more comfortable, but the accuracy of holding it as opposed to a tripod, how
Jeff, I'm going to blue box you, so you go for it. You're on.
Okay. Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble at the beginning, making people sick when I first did it. They were giving me a hard time. But it's hard. I would not use a monopod if you're going to do a longer. Okay. We did about 5 to 7 minutes. I would not use a monopod because it is hard to keep it I mean, it was very light and it was easy to use, but any movement it kind of seems to tax the bandwidth, and we'd have some smearing and making people ill. So,
Okay.
but I mean, you could probably rig up something that would help with like to balance it a little better. But any length you need to use a tripod.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, and Sheila Strover also posted a question about the same thing, wondering about a foot extension for the monopod.
A foot extension meaning something that goes onto your foot?
No, to flip down and be a foot for the monopod.
Okay, yeah.
The thing is we had to carry everything, and so you got to think about. We had backpacks. Ronnie had a backpack, and so you've got to think about where you're going to be. And we never knew where we were going to do an interview from, so we wanted to be light and mobile. Yeah. I only took a tripod with me on one day because we knew we were going to do Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah, and that day we got kicked out of where we were by the security people, and I think that partly had to do with the fact we had so much extra equipment. We were an obvious target.
Right.
But anyways, unless there's another quick question for the equipment, we're going to cover the equipment in more detail after the training. So let me jump into the procedures now. So coming up now is we're going to talk about the process of setting up all this Hangout on Air, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that maybe you're not thinking about, but you probably need to. All right, so what we're doing is the process that we use to set up and get the team together, because this is definitely a team effort to make all this Hangout on Air mobile activity work. So here's the big caveat, or the big thing you got to realize. The desktop browser is required when you want to initiate your Hangout on Air. You cannot start it from mobile. The mobile can only join in. So you're not able to just initiate on your own on the streets without using a desktop browser. So because of that, we needed to have people help us on the desktop, and because we were doing this for multiple days in a row, I was wanting to get a bunch of people to help us, so we chose to do this. We utilized a Google Plus page and its own connected YouTube channel with multiple page managers. We wanted to have enough people signed up so they weren't sitting around all day long, but they were there for a specific period of time. And I also wanted to have a backup because I know how some things work, so I wanted at least 2 people per broadcast just in case. And so we needed to have multiple managers, so that's why we chose a Google Plus page. Otherwise, I'm going to have to share my username and password for my own profile, and that's just not good when you're doing with that many people. So with the page, everybody can be is a manager, and they can use their own username and log in, so it's great. You can have up to 50 people as a manager. And so here's just a quick overview of what the page was. We built a page called the Hangout Helper, and on the bottom right corner, this is what's called the dashboard for the page. It shows you YouTube activity in the upper right corner, and right below it we had the manager list. So I'm going to go into more detail. Here are the set of managers. We had about 25 managers. Each one would sign up for a slot of time, and we would have a primary and a secondary host. The primary host was the main person hitting the buttons, but if something went wrong, the secondary person could jump right in and hit the buttons and make things work. So it worked out pretty well, but we needed to do a fair amount of coordination as well as training as to what's the process you do to start up the Hangouts and things like that. So honestly, we spent about 3 weeks before we went live on the streets getting everybody ready to go. So with all those people, you need to be able to communicate. So what I did for the communication piece, what I call the back channel communication, is we utilize these things in the little boxes, a yellow box and a red box. These are Hangout message box communications. Some people call it the Hangout chat. It was really, really good. It worked out quite well. In fact, from what I understand, because all these people were members of the Hangout Mastery community, they all get to know each other better, even through this process. It was kind of neat to see that happen. The yellow one on the right is an example of one shift changing over to the other. This is Volker saying, it's over to you guys, or you ladies, take it from here, thanks, have a good time, kind of thing. And the one on the left, the red one, is an example of me from my mobile phone, the mobile device, actually communicating to the team saying, are you ready to do another one? Then they're saying yes, and then I gave them the title for the Hangout. So this was a process. Somehow you got to figure out how to communicate to your control room or your team that's actually starting the Hangouts on Air. As a reminder, when people are signed in as the page, they do not have access to these things, these Hangout message boxes. Those are only available for profiles. So you've got to make sure that you start with the profile, pop these out to be their own little floating windows. Then when you switch over to being the page, they will remain, and you can use both at the same time, which, by the way, is really kind of nice. This screenshot is a view from my phone. I was using a Samsung Galaxy Note 3, and it has a nifty little feature. When you plug in an earphone or a headphone, in this case, the microphone jack, it suggests some apps that you might want to use with that. And the two that are on the left were the ones we use the most often. The green one is the Hangout app. That's the Hangout mobile or message box for our communication. And then because of the way we did it, I would shift over to the Google Plus app to actually join into the Hangout. So it was handy to be able to go back and forth between these two areas pretty quickly with this particular interface. Just wanted to let you see it from the view of the page. I'm sorry, from the view of the phone. There we go. Now, strategies, events. We were using the event tool from Google Plus to set up the activity, the landing page in essence, where people would go to watch these live broadcasts. This was a multi-day event, meaning South by Southwest. We were there just for 5 days. It kept going, but the interactive portion was the part I was the most interested in, so we stayed there for the first 5 days. Because it was a multi-day thing, we had to decide strategically, do we want one long event that's going to handle all of the 5 days, which some people do it that way, or did we want multiple events? I chose what I did last year, which was multiple events, and here's an example of what those look like. If you were to go to the event listing area, you would say here's day 4, day 3, day 2. We had day 1, but we also made a special event just for our friend Guy Kawasaki for 2 reasons. One, he's Guy Kawasaki. You make special stuff for him. The second reason was we were concerned that there might be more than 500 comments, and if they were, that would fill up the day's event. And so we had a separate event for day 1 and another one for Guy. So that's sort of the strategy that we chose. Then we have to talk about what's the type of event you're using, because there's 2 main types. There's the SHOAE, some people pronounce a SHU, which stands for Scheduled Hangout on Air Event. That's the newer format for events. Or the old format, which I'm calling the traditional event. The traditional event is what we ended up choosing, primarily because the traditional event gave us more flexibility, which we needed, and I'll show you why in a second. Here's the example of the event page. With the traditional event, you can change out the video that shows up embedded inside of it. With the scheduled one, you cannot. It's one Hangout on Air video per event. We needed multiple Hangouts in one event, so we chose the traditional one. So this would show us the most recent Hangout. You'll see on the details area, when you expand it, you'll see a list of all the different Hangout on Airs that were done that particular day. And if you were to scroll down further, you'll see what I broke out here on the left. We put a listing of all the different events that you might want to go to from day 1 through day 5. So you had links to jump around. So that's sort of the layout and process that we chose to use, and it worked pretty well. Now, when you do a traditional event, there is no built-in Hangout on Air. There's no button to just say start it. So we had to build our own method to create what I call a eventless Hangout on Air, just a standalone Hangout on Air. They're much easier to do when you're running it as a profile, but when you do it as a page, you can get some special link methodology, and we eventually made it into a bit.ly link that was easy for all of the 25 Hangout helpers to use. So they could just type this in, and it would automatically log them in as a page and start up a Hangout on Air as the page. And this stands for the THHOA, stood for the Hangout Helper Hangout on Air. That's what that meant. So that worked out really well for everybody. Then when they got here, this was the beginning of the launching of that particular Hangout. They would get the title from the mobile team through that Hangout message box. They would type it in, and they would invite in the page so that the assistant, meaning the backup host, could get in easily, as well as we chose to use the page methodology to invite in the phone as well. Some people also just invite in the profile, and that works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. It seems to be getting better, but you never know. So this was the method we chose. It worked 100% of the time. We invited in the page, and then the phone would go over to look at the page and then join in from that area. So you title it, You invite the people into the film strip you're trying to get in, and then you click the green button to start up the green room. And then, just as a reminder, the people that were doing that were getting the information through the Hangout message box. So as a tip, this worked really well. Everybody's chattering in this back room channel. If the if the mobile device types in with a hashtag and then the name of the title starting with a hashtag, that was a cue to make sure that the people that were just chattering saying, yeah, I wonder when Ronnie's going to show up again, he must be out eating lunch or something like that. This was their cue to know we're ready to do a live one. In this case, as an example, I was actually able to type in, are we ready to do another? But sometimes I wasn't able to because of the spur-of-the-moment activity. So we just type in the hashtag, the name of the rest of the title, and they would know to take it from there. Okay, one of the other jobs of the host, and we're wrapping up these slides, so you know, we're coming to the end. One of the other jobs of the Hangout on Air host was to go to edit the event once they received the title, and they would grab the YouTube video link from within the Hangout on Air that they've created, and they would go and edit by doing what's called show more options, and then on the very bottom where the red arrow is, they would type in or paste in the Hangout URL, the video URL from YouTube. That was their first job. The second, when they're editing the event, was to paste in the link to the YouTube video along with the other ones that had been happening prior in that particular day. And then they would save that, and then we go to what I would call our final checks. We would make sure the equipment was working. We had issues with our microphone, which we can talk about when we get into our Q&A section, which is coming right up here. But basically, we'd do some final checking, making sure everything was cool, and then the host would start the broadcast by hitting the green button that says Start Broadcast. And they would have to cue us out on the street because we had no idea that we had started it. So they would cue it by, the way we decided is we let them, the hosts, speak and do an introduction by telling the title of the video and saying, we're live now, take it away. And then that was my cue because I could hear them to do it. But it was also a good idea to give a verbal or visual clue so that the cameraman, if they needed to, could give me a visual cue that we were actually live because we didn't know when we were live. All right, so all this stuff went down inside the Hangout Mastery community. I love the place. The people in there, I think, are really, really enjoying the process. They're learning all these things, how to actually run and create these broadcasts from mobile devices. Any one of the people that were involved now, you could probably hire them, and they could help you do this. So it's a great community to learn stuff. If you want to join in, then you can go to this bit.ly link, bit.ly/Hangout Mastery, or better yet, find someone who's already a member, ask them if they have an affiliate link, and join in through that because the affiliate link helps them pay for their monthly membership cost. And just as a heads up, the cost is going up next month in April. So if you were kicking around the idea of joining and not sure, you want to get a better cost, you can lock in that rate if you join before the end of March. Then you'll have locked in that price for up to 12 more months. You don't have to stay all 12 months. You can cancel anytime you like. It's billed month to month, but you can lock in the better price right now.